Hi, my name is Logan Gonzalez, and we're here with Mas Hashimoto, and we're going to be explaining racism in the modern world today, and we're going to be asking Mas some questions about his life. So, can you explain where you were born and when you were born?
Mm-hmm. I was born right here in Watsonville, California, in 1935. So I'm 83 years old. I still live in Watsonville.
There we go. Local. How was your family life like? What was going on at the time? Who were your brothers? Your
sisters? My father was a cook, and we had a restaurant business, and the restaurant business closed when he died in 1938, before I was 3 years old.
Oh wow! What was that restaurant like?
It was a udon shop. Okay, you know what udon is?
Mm-mm.
Noodles.
Noodles. Oh.
Okay, like ramen. Okay.
Yeah.
And my father also had a sake, alcohol.
Yeah.
A brewery.
So what were did you have any siblings?
I have 6 older brothers. All brothers. My oldest brother is 20 years older than me.
Wow, so he's not alive anymore? He
was, when he was 7, and brother number 2 were 5, they were sent to Japan for their education because there was talk about rounding up all those of Japanese ancestry in this country and sending them back to Japan.
Wow.
My father not taking any chances, because that could have happened because of racism against the Japanese, sent the first 2 to Japan.
Oh wow. Yeah, so what was racism like at the time? What did you feel about what was going on? What were your personal feelings on
that? You have to understand, racism has been a major problem in this country from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Against Native Americans, against blacks, anybody who wasn't white, of the white race, Anglo, which means English, Saxons, that means German, Saxony, and Protestant. So the impression was that an American was a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, but he had to be free, not a indentured servant,
mm-hmm.
To be a citizen, and to vote. So the Constitution of the United States, from the very beginning of this country, racism was practiced.
Yeah.
So racism is not new.
Oh yeah, for sure. I guess more your experiences with racism, when you're your experiences.
Racism, because blacks were property. The Constitution of the United States practiced racism. All 3 branches of the government practiced racism.
Yeah.
So the idea that we're free and equal, no, we've never been that. That's maybe a goal,
mm-hmm.
a mission.
Well, I actually saw this documentary in English class, and it was the 13th, and somewhere in the 13th Amendment, there was a loophole to arrest all African Americans and put them in jail, and all the there's all the property or people who own the prisons, the private prisons, are making a ton of money off of it,
mm-hmm.
and that's another form of racism, pretty much. I mean, it's in the government, like you said, it's built in the government. It's pretty crazy. Yeah.
So racism beginning against Native Americans, against blacks, against Mexicans, against Asians.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's been our history.
So can you describe one particular personal racist experience that you experienced? One that really is just it's always in your mind, I guess?
Well, in high school, some of my teachers at Watsonville High School some of the older teachers, were racist. We came back after World War II, from our prison camp, okay? And there were certain teachers that, quote, hated Japs, unquote. And this was in 1945, 1946. The war ended in 1945. Several teachers were very anti-Japanese. And so Japanese students never got a grade higher than C. My biology teacher, she made sure that Japanese Americans sat right in front of her desk because she believed that we cheated to get good grades. We didn't have to cheat. We just have to memorize in biology. And but no matter how good we did, our final grade was a C. And that kept us from the California Scholarship Federation, from National Merit Scholarships. There were several teachers that made sure that we never got a grade higher than a C. We didn't get a D and F. If we got an F, we would have to repeat the class because the class was required. So C was the grade. But I have to qualify that. There were in fact, most of the teachers were very kind, very thoughtful, supportive. Most of the teachers were supportive.
That's good. Was it more often than not that they were, trying to suppress you and trying to suppress the Asian people, or was it more that they were it was more often that they were equal and fair? Because that's what I always get, I guess, misconstrued, is when they talk about back in the 1950s when African Americans were fighting for their rights and stuff, and they always bring up oh, everyone hated African Americans, but then you see some white activists with the African Americans fighting with them. So it's obviously not everyone was racist, but in my mind I always see it every white person hated black people. How often was racism, I guess? Did you
Yeah, that was a misconception of that all white people dislike blacks. That's not true. But historically, okay, blacks were considered inferior mentally. Okay, in the days of slavery, blacks were considered to be superior pets, better than dogs and cats. Okay.
almost like farm animals? They were treated like farm animals.
Classified with animals.
Yeah.
Okay. And women were treated just a little better than black slaves because the Constitution discriminated against women. When they say all men are created equal, they usually in English literature style, when you say men, it included women. Okay. But today we say men and women to clarify.
Yeah.
But yeah, discrimination against people you don't really know. And there's always the fear, okay, associated with hatred.
Yeah.
You guys,
Wow.
you trace, okay, you, mom and dad, grandparents, okay, great grandparents and such. You go back 25 generations, all right? That'll be back to about 1275. Not very far, okay? About 700 years. I get 800 years. 800 years. How many people lived to produce you? 1.3 billion people existed before. Then that's only to 1275. Going back further, it's astronomical to produce you. 1.3 billion people lived on this earth just 800 years ago. And that's only 800 years. And we've been on this earth for longer than that.
So can you describe some of the events that led to you being in the camp?
Okay. The Bureau of the Census, every 10 years, right? And so it was 1940 when they took the census in the United States. And so the government knew where we were, how many we were, our ages, our names. So in Washington, Oregon, and California, it was easy to round us up because there were Japantowns in virtually every large city. There were Japantowns because that was the only place we could live.
And those were...
Some of the nicer places, it was restrictive, meaning that white people will never sell their property to minorities. And in the deed to the property, to the home, it was said that you will not sell to any member of the minority. Mexicans, Filipinos, blacks, Chinese, Mexicans, you will not sell. It was against the law to sell. So where we could live, usually in the lower part of town, the more the ghetto type place. So it was easy to round us up, to put us in prison.
Yeah.
But and so 120,000 of us from Washington, Oregon, and California will go to prison. But what many people forget is that in the territory of Hawaii, the census was taken there too, because it was our territory. It wasn't a state. There were more Japanese Americans living in Hawaii, in the 4 major islands, 158,000, with the exception of 1,400. They didn't go to prison. And Hawaii was in the war zone. Now, what was the difference? Racism didn't and doesn't exist as much in Hawaii as it does in the mainland.
Oh, okay. Wow. So like when it happened, like your family, how did they just come to your house and just you gotta go? Or what?
We were removed basically, with the assistance of the United States Army.
Oh wow, so
All right?
the Army was
So
at your house?
They got the guns,
Wow.
And and our guns, what few guns or samurai swords we might have had, was taken away. And radios were taken away. Cameras were taken away. The flashlights were taken away. You're wondering, why flashlights? Well, we might go down to the beach and signal the Japanese submarines. You know how bad flashlights were in those days? The batteries didn't last very long. They weren't very good. So we went to temporary camps first, and then to the big major camps. And it was sad for seniors in high school. They wanted to finish high school with their classmates, and they weren't allowed to do that. And some of them didn't, virtually all of them, didn't get to graduate with their classmates. So the class of 1942, Japanese Americans are missing. Now 1/3 of the graduating class of Watsonville High School were Japanese Americans.
So did you guys have education in the camps? Were the
Finally, not at first. Okay, education was not a priority for the U.S. Army, and the civilian agency that ran the camps. And finally, after we settled in the main camp, classrooms will be set up in some of the empty rooms. And so we didn't have qualified teachers. We didn't have a curriculum, course of study. We didn't have books, paper, pencil.
How do you do school? Like, how do you...
Just word of mouth. You just kind of talk. Finally, California sent us some books to Arizona. And California said, well, they're our children. And so they kindly sent us some books. I didn't have second. Third grade was a blank. I do remember fourth grade. We do have, we finally got, in the last year, some qualified teachers who were Caucasian. Many of them whom were Quakers from Pennsylvania, who volunteered to teach us.
And Quakers, they were like, what was their belief?
The Quakers are noted for being nonviolent. They don't believe in war. Quakers will serve in the military of the United States. Okay. How? In what capacity?
Oh yeah, if they don't like violence.
If they're nonviolent.
Yeah, nonviolent. Oh, they'd help people. They'd like kill people. They'd like.
They're not going to be using guns. What can Quakers do in the war?
Oh, they work at the factories, and they like build ammo, or they like do ammo. I don't know.
Doctors, nurses, ambulance drivers, okay? Yeah. They could serve in that capacity, and they did. Yeah. Okay?
Oh, okay. So, what did you do for, like, leisure? Like, what did you do for fun, like, at the camps?
Well, we didn't have toys, okay, until our adults made some toys. But we were constantly fighting dust storms and sandstorms. We were constantly fighting diarrhea, dysentery, until we got proper refrigeration for our food. So for recreation, friends would send us some baseball equipment. For basketball, all you need is a basketball.
Yeah.
And the hard part was pumping the basketball with air.
Yeah, how did you do that?
Our adults, this is in several of the camps, our adults made a 9-hole golf course. Now, there were many that enjoy golf. And so some golf equipment will be, you don't have a full 14 clubs, okay? You just have several, driver, maybe a 8-iron and putter, okay? And so for the greens, it's sand, and we made rollers. And so if your ball is here and the hole is here, you get to roll this, okay? Use the roller to smooth out and flatten the sand, and then you could putt. So every hole had what was known as a roller. And golf balls were so rare that you used them over and over and over. In fact, if you could, you would paint them white so that you could use it again. And then, you didn't want to lose a golf ball. So in the bushes, you try to get You saw the golf ball. You had to be careful because there might be rattlesnakes next to the golf ball. It was so hot, golf balls would melt in that heat.
And did you guys play like? Was it like a really small like little field, or was it like it's like huge?
It was on the edge of camp, and so there were some mesquite trees. Okay, so we golf around them. I didn't play golf, but my guardian and others played golf.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Wow.
What I did, okay, because it was so hot, is I learned to swim. Swimming was absolutely essential. We would wear, swimsuits underneath our clothes. So after school, we'd go to the swimming pool, which was a big hole just dug.
Damn. Okay.
But racism, okay, we read the newspapers. Newspapers are not public servants. Newspapers, it's a business. It's, even now, advertising paper with some news. Without the advertising, the newspapers die. That was true from the very beginning. Advertising. And if advertising stops, because the advertisers will go to the internet or other places, newspapers right now, printed newspapers, they're in trouble.
Yeah, definitely.
And in a few more years, they may completely disappear.
It's all just going to be underground. Yeah.
Newspapers need help. Now, the question then becomes, and this is even with Facebook and others, how do they make money? Advertisers. No advertisers, they go out of business.
Yeah. How do you view racism like today? Like how do you see it? Do you think it's like over glorified, or do you think it's
Okay, you guys are really lucky because you live in California. California is so different from the other states. California could exist as an independent country. All right?
Mm-hmm.
We got 40 million people. We've got people. See, the gold rush was different from in the history for others from other states, because when the gold rush took place in 1849, people from all over the world came. They came from Europe. They came from Africa. They came from South America. They came from Asia to find gold. So our population is so different from others. In Texas and Arkansas, Missouri, the poor white trash of North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina, they kept moving. The poor kept moving westward. But not California. California is a leader in education. It's a leader in technology. It's a leader in agriculture.
yeah.
You want to know something? The hills here, I love them. You go to Florida, you go to Kansas, no mountains.
Yeah. Shit.
We
That's
live
nice.
in the most beautiful place in the whole world. This Monterey Bay region,
Yeah. Do you think maybe that like not breeds racism, but like breeds kind of some like arrogance like towards like people live here and they're like, oh, like they're just so used to like living like luxurious, I guess, because like nothing's really going on. Like we're like it's probably like the most peaceful time like on earth right now. Like, do you think people
No,
are
one of the differences between us and others is that we take education seriously. We take our politics seriously. We're major movers in those areas. One of the things that I wanted, okay, when the University of California came to Santa Cruz,
Yeah.
Governor Brown, the father, okay, this Edmund G. Pat Brown, okay, the father, I told him, I would like UCSC not to be another UCSC campus. And he goes, what? I said, I wanted UCSC to be a postgraduate school where all the best students from the other colleges and universities will do their master's and PhD degrees, do their research in interesting fields.
Yeah.
Just the top brains
Yeah.
come to Santa Cruz. He says, no, we're going to make Santa Cruz a regular campus. It wasn't bad, you know. The intelligentsia came to Santa Cruz County. People with experiences from all over the world came. One of the best and one of the most important part of history today is interracial marriages.
Yeah.
Before, okay, Asians, okay, blacks and others could not marry whites. It was against the law. But today, we have interracial marriages. The backgrounds of these people, it's just absolutely fabulous.
Yeah.
And that fights against racism. You understand? Interracial marriages and the children that are produced and such. Oh yeah. Make sense?
Yeah.
And the more interracial marriages we have, the better.
So that was our interview with Mas Hashimoto. We appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Well, thank you for coming over, you guys.
Thank you so much. And we'll see you next time. Thank you for having us
Hey,
over.
you're welcome. Thanks for coming. Anytime.
I really have to.
Hey, Logan.
I really love the
Oh,
landscaping here.
thank
It's
you.
really
He
nice.
designed it himself. Well, thank you. It's supposed to be like
If you ever need to paint your house, Frank, I'll be painting.
Logan, what do you have to say, brother?
All I have to say is, it's a wrap. We did it.
That's right.
We did it. That was, damn, I was pretty like nervous for that interview. Cause you're like so like, you know, I saw you at the presentation. I was like, oh, I'm interviewing Mas Hashimoto.
Oh.
School, super photo. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. It was
Okay.
nice meeting you.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
Be careful not to cut your head on.
Okay.
Yeah, really, because you have your.
All hail Stalin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, later, brother.